Hey everybody, welcome back to Disneyopolis. I'm Bryan. We're here at City Hall again for another fantastic show. Got my partner in crime, Duffy, with me, as always, an all-around general troublemaker. No, I'm just kidding. Love Paper Duffy. Today we're going to be talking about Walt Disney World resorts. Now, I'm not talking about the parks. I'm actually talking about the hotels that you stay in. And I like to keep things, globally Disney-centric. However, most of the time that I spend in any Walt Disney parks are in the Walt Disney World Resort area. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. In celebration of that, we've got the Disney's Pop Century mug. As always, everything tastes better when it comes out of a Disney mug. What we're going to talk about today is what your options are, what the benefits are. And I'll start out by saying this. I've got a lot of friends who, when they go to Walt Disney World, they stay off property. And it's for some very good reasons, excellent reasons as a matter of fact. The first of those, and probably the one that they all cite the most, is cost. Let's face it, we've talked about it before, but a trip to Walt Disney World is one of the more expensive trips that you're going to take. It just is. But as I've also said before, you get a lot for the money that you spend. But they say, hey, we're not going to be spending a whole lot of time in the hotel room. We're going to be spending most of our time out in the parks or down at Disney Springs or doing things in the surrounding Orlando area. And so I don't want to spend a lot of money when I go to, when I go down there to vacation. I want my money to count for other things. And again, I get that. I truly do. On the other hand, I kind of look at it this way. When you're taking a trip to Walt Disney World or to any Disney park, you are going there because you want an experience that you can't get anywhere else. No matter where else you go, you're not going to get to stay at a Disney resort if you go to, if you go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or St. Louis, Missouri, or Reno, Nevada. You're just not. Again, not that there's anything wrong with staying off site, but when we go, we love that total immersive Disney experience. And so probably the biggest pro to staying on property for me is it keeps you in the Disney bubble. When you're in that Disney bubble, you get to forget about all the rest of the world and all the other things that are going on. You're there for a very specific reason. And if you're hardcore Disney fanatics like I am and like you are, it's because you want to be in that environment. You want to enjoy yourself, not just at the parks, but even when you're not at the parks, you want all your interactions to be as Disney-centric as you possibly can. Now, that's the first pro. The second pro, of course, is, and we've talked about this before, is extra magic hours. When you stay at a Walt Disney World resort, or you stay at, there are some resorts that aren't Walt Disney World resorts that get the same benefit, like, Swan and Dolphin. But when you stay, you get extra magic hours, which means you could be in the parks up to 2-3 hours later in the evening, or as early as an hour in, before the general public gets there. And to me, that's worth it. Unless you're doing a touring plan that absolutely positively just says stay away, I think it's worth it to do it. Even if you've done a touring plan, at the end of that touring plan, you've got time on your hands. If you don't want to leave the parks, don't. You don't have to, because of the Magic Band, you get to take advantage of extra magic hours at any of the Disney theme parks, wherever they're having them for that time. So let's talk about some of the different types of resorts that are available to you. And there are basically 3 or 4 types. You've got your values, of which Pop Century is one, and there are some other like All-Star Movies, All-Star Music, All-Star Sports, and there are others. Art of Animation is considered a value resort. You have your moderates, those such as Caribbean Beach, Coronado Springs, and Port Orleans French Quarter, and Port Orleans Riverside. These are moderates. And then, of course, you have the Deluxe, which would be like the Polynesian, the Grand Floridian, the Contemporary, Animal Kingdom Lodge. And then you have DVC, which is sort of like kind of like a private amped up version of the Deluxe resorts. And we'll kind of talk about all of them because I've had the good fortune to be able to stay at several of these different levels. Our first trip to Walt Disney World, actually I believe our first 2 trips as a family, when we stayed on property, we stayed at a value resort. The bonus to those back then, as always, is price. And back when we were going, I mean, you could get into a value resort sometimes as little as, under $80 a night, which is really, really good. And, the sleeping accommodations, they're not large, but they are themed. And depending upon where you stay will determine what kind of theming that you get. Again, our first two trips, when we stayed at the Values, we went to Pop Century both times. I think the first time we stayed in the 80s rooms. The next time we stayed in, I believe it was the 70s room. I'm pretty sure it was a 70s room. But, everything from the bedspreads to the curtains to the wallpaper all had a specific theme. And especially at Pop Century, the buildings have these huge icons on the outside of them, like bowling pins and 8-track tapes. And if you're a younger viewer and you don't know what those are, ask mom and dad, they'll tell you. At the 80s resorts, you had things like Rubik's Cubes and Walkman and there were other things too. Generally speaking, at any Disney resort, every Disney resort, you're going to have a pool. People say, well, I have pools and I stay off-site. And you're right. But how many places do you stay off-site where you can say, hey, I'm going to go to one of 5 pools or one of 6 different pools? Well, you can do that when you're staying at a Walt Disney World resort, especially such as Pop Century. And the pools, just like the rooms, just like the buildings, just like the whole area there, it's themed. I still remember taking my kids to the Hippy Dippy pool, and it was wonderful. And another great thing about staying at a Disney resort is you get some fantastic pictures. To this day, I still break open my Pop Century and Caribbean Beach photos, and when I'm at work, I'll actually make those my wallpaper. Just a little bit of Disney that I've been able to bring home with me. And I mean, we do park pictures too, but seriously, it's the resorts that, again, because they're so unique, are the things that I really, really enjoy in large part about my Disney vacations. So again, sleeping quarters aren't very large, but then, if you're not needing a lot of room, or you're a small family, or you're a family on a budget, it just so happens I have a large family and we're always on a budget. And like I said, our first couple times, that worked out very well for us to stay in the value resorts. All the resorts have a food court, and they all serve pretty much the same fare, pizza, burgers, fries. They do have some healthier options as well, and of course they have, you pick up your Disney mugs and get unlimited refills while you're at the resort. If you drink a lot of soft drinks like I do, that's a fantastic deal. I think they're up to $20-ish right now. But again, well worth it. Well worth it indeed. The next step up will be the moderate resorts. Now, they're a little bit more expensive than your value resorts, but not prohibitively so. And what's really great is in a moderate resort, you do get a little bit more space. You do get a few other amenities. I know, for instance, when we went and we stayed at a moderate resort, and we stayed at a couple, our most recent trip and our first stay at a moderate were both at the same place, Caribbean Beach Resort. Again, different theming, and it's all Disney centric, but with touches of whatever that theme is. Just like at Pop Century, you had the different decades, the theming, the arcades was themed. Same thing with the moderate resorts, like Caribbean Beach Resorts, for instance. I mean, it's all themed like the islands, and it's wonderful. I mean, they've got their own beaches, they've got their own hammocks, and it's a family thing that anytime we stay at a moderate resort, we try and get a picture of one another in those little hammocks that they have out there. But you get, like I said, a little bit more room. Generally speaking, you get some really, really nice views for the money. And I also want to say that during our first trip to Caribbean Beach Resort, we actually had a mini fridge there. And actually our second one we did there too. So you have mini fridges in all of the rooms. You do get a coffee maker. You do get, I believe you get ironing things. Plus you get a room safe, which is great. And it used to be that it was an extra perk when you stayed at the higher price resorts that you would get free Wi-Fi. Well, now you get free Wi-Fi in all of them. But again, A little bit more room, still have lots of pools. I know at Caribbean Beach Resort they have, which is the largest resort on Disney property. I think it's got over 3,500 rooms. And you have the big main pool, but then each island, as they call it, like Bermuda or Barbados or Trinidad, they all have their own separate quiet pools. So again, another benefit to staying at the moderates is just basically more space, a few more amenities. And then you've got your deluxe level resorts. Things like the Contemporary, Bay Lake at the Contemporary, Animal Kingdom Lodge, Boardwalk, Yacht Club, Beach Club, Saratoga Springs. These are all on the deluxe level. And these days, the deluxe and the DVC usually will share the same properties, with the DVC being, of course, exclusively for DVC members, and they actually own a share of that. And we'll get into that in a second. But with your deluxe resorts, it is definitely a cut above any of the other two levels. Much larger rooms, much larger suites to choose from, full-size refrigerators usually. You've got laundry built into each and every room, so you can do that kind of thing. If you're going to go out to the beach, like we do, we like to go out to Cocoa Beach, stay at Jetty Park for a day. When we come back, we're generally speaking full of sand. And so we've got all the laundry facilities there, and you can dump everything in, do all your laundry. That way when you get home, all you got to do is unpack it and put it away, instead of having to do 5, 6, 7 loads of laundry, however much your family generates. Mine generates a lot. But again, more space, better amenities. Instead of just a coffee pot and a microwave, you get a coffee pot, a microwave, a full-size stove. It's a full-size kitchen. The last time that we went down, we actually stopped at Goodings and we got a bunch of groceries, took them back to the rooms. So we actually had real breakfast on days that we weren't going into, really early to the park. So when we came home at night, instead of ordering pizza out, we already had pizzas in the room. We can just pop them in the oven and fix them. They all come stocked with plates and saucers and cups and you name it. There's more than one bathroom, generally speaking, which is not anything you can say for the rooms in the value or the moderate level resorts. In a word, they're very nice. You pay a lot for them, comparative, but you get a lot for the money that you pay. You get mousekeeping in all three of these. That's Disney's term for housekeeping. And they'll come out and they'll do the Mickey Mouse ears with the towels on the bed, and they'll make everything really nice and make sure you've got all the soaps and everything. So that's kind of universal across the board. And then there's DVC. I was privileged, my wife and myself and our kids, to be DVC members for almost 2 years. As I mentioned in a previous show, we got in at a really good time and we had to get out at a really bad time. We had been DVC members for about 2 years when the economy tanked, and as I mentioned earlier, we had to choose between our house and our DVC property, and quite obviously we chose our house. Silly us. Anyway, but during the time we were DVC, it gave us an opportunity to try out some fantastic Disney resorts to stay at. We bought in to Saratoga Springs. We got to stay at Saratoga Springs. Fantastic property, neat as a pin. Love the layout, it's wonderful. At that time, there was also Animal Kingdom Lodge, both Jambo and Kidani. Absolutely loved it. As a matter of fact, that was the most sumptuous hotel at any level, anywhere, any place in the world that we've ever stayed at. We've stayed at some really nice hotels. We've stayed at Boardwalk, which was probably the most fun hotel that we've ever stayed at. We actually had a room of the big community pool and the water slide. And of course, you can look right out your window and there is the Boardwalk. We stayed at Beach Club, which was really nice. That was really pretty as well. And again, the things that you get with DVC, when you're DVC, you own a portion of that. It's a timeshare, but it's unlike any other timeshare program you've ever been a part of, because yeah, you own an interest in it, but you can use your interest at any of the Disney resorts, including those that don't have a theme park, like Vero Beach, But trust me, again, they're deluxe resorts when you're talking about DVC. Fantastic amenities. Here's what I would say. If you've got the money, if you're already spending a lot for your trip and you've done well and you've saved, I say go for a deluxe resort. If you don't own DVC, there are places you can look on the web where you can rent DVC points. And basically what that means is you enter into an agreement with a DVC member who's not going to be using their points that year. They offer to let you stay sometimes for a lot less than what they even have to pay for it. And you rent their points and you go and you stay there and you're treated. I mean, the only thing they have to do is actually set up the reservation for you. Everything else you're taken care of just as if you were the DVC owner. And there's some really nice perks for being DVC too, but really if all you're looking for is a really nice and sumptuous place to stay, renting DVC points is a fantastic idea. We've stayed, as I said, at Disney's Pop Century Resort. Loved it. We loved the theme. When our kids were real little, this was something that was a lot of fun. It's loud. It's, there's a lot going on. Lots of color, lots of sound. Fantastic check-in area, and I will say it's one of the better check-in areas at any Disney resort was at Pop Century. And of course, they've got a really cool arcade, like a lot of those, like a lot of the resorts do. But we had a great time staying there. My wife and I, that was kind of our era, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then we started having children of our own. So it was really neat to go back and say, hey, I had this toy when I was a kid, or do you remember this TV show, or do you remember this style of furniture? And as a matter of fact, when you first pull into the resort, it says Pop Century, remember when? And yeah, we actually did. So Pop Century is a great place for your first trip to Walt Disney World, or like I said, if you're on a budget. If you have a smaller family than I have, I come from a family, my family has 6 people in it. If you can sleep 5 and under, perfect. If you're not going to be spending a lot of time at the resort, but you still want some of that Disney magic for, when you return to the resort or when you wake up, great place to get it. That would be my choice for the value resort. Close second would be Art of Animation. Absolutely love the theming, and you do get the bonus benefit that you can actually get a family style suite which will actually sleep up to 6 people. Again, a great bonus if you're a big family like mine. It's not that you necessarily save a whole lot. As a matter of fact, this last trip that we went on, we originally were going to stay at Art of Animation simply because it had the family suites. We got in on a deal and at a time that allowed us to go ahead and pick up a moderate resort, and the total difference over the trip was only $84. So for only $84 more total for the whole 5 days that we stayed there, we were able to stay in 2 rooms at a moderate resort and have a little bit of extra elbow room. And of course, we brought a friend of the family as well, and it worked out just fantastic. But again, my first choice would be Pop Century. Moving on to the moderate resorts, we had an opportunity to stay at a few of the moderate resorts. Hands down, our favorite there is the Caribbean Beach Resort, and there are some really nice ones. My second choice would be Coronado Springs. Coronado Springs I have heard described, and I fully concur, as a deluxe resort in a moderate package and at a moderate price. Fantastic amenities, and it actually feels more like a deluxe resort simply because they have a convention center there on site. And so, business travelers, they like a little bit better experience, a little more lush, if you will. And so that's a great place to stay. But for theming, as far as I'm concerned, you just can't beat Caribbean Beach Resort. We like the beach feel. You've got a great food court. It's even themed. Again, it's a big resort. Really, the only drawbacks to a resort the size of Caribbean Beach is, well, the size itself. It's so big that it has its own internal transportation system. So if you don't drive a vehicle there, or you don't have a car rental or a vehicle rental, I hope you like Disney transportation, because you'll spend a fair amount of time on Disney transportation buses. Personally, I love it. I love the banners and the signs on the inside. I still get excited to this day when we first pull into Lake Buena Vista and I start seeing not only the purple road signs, but I start seeing those Disney wrap buses. Love it. So I'm going to rate my number one choice for a moderate resort as Caribbean Beach, and number two would have to be Coronado Springs. And again, I encourage you, go to websites such as the Diz Boards or All Ears and check out what these different resorts have to offer. There's a lot of really great information out there, and you get a ton of information from people who have stayed there. And if you're looking for instant information, I say instant information to find out what's going on at any given moment. I know I mentioned them prior. Don't work for them, don't get any kickbacks, but again, Touring Plans is a great website to go to. If you download the Lines application, pay for your membership and get in there and look at the chat rooms, because they've got some fantastic questions. If I ever need a question answered on the spot about something going on at Walt Disney World, I know if I ask that question, typically within 15-20 minutes I've got an answer from somebody who's either just been there or who is on site there right there. So right there. Anyway, moving on to the Deluxe. This is a category, like I said, because of being DVC, that we had an opportunity to stay at a lot of really great places, and this is a really hard category for me to pick my favorites in. I'm going to give you more than just the two. I will tell you right up front, personally, we loved staying at Bay Lake. The rooms are quasi-futuristic. They're just a wonderful complement to the old A-frame contemporary. We loved staying at Boardwalk just because of the feel of it. We love staying at Beach Club, Yacht and Beach Club. They're fairly similar. Again, because of the theming. Animal Kingdom Lodge, amazing. Saratoga Springs, quiet, relaxing. But if I only had to pick one, I'd have to say my number one choice for a deluxe level hotel would have to be Animal Kingdom Lodge. Now, it's not very convenient to any of the parks except for Animal Kingdom, but it is an unreal place to stay. It's rich. It's a warm feeling place. When you walk into the check-in lobby, it's like you've entered another world. I mean, it is gorgeous, particularly if you go during a holiday season. They've got it all decked out. It's really beautiful. If you listen to any of the Disney-themed radio stations, particularly Magical Mouse Radio, you hear a lot of music from the Animal Kingdom Lodge. So, and I think it's really funny that when we go to the lodges, the different hotels, the music that I hear, my first thought isn't, oh, I'm in Animal Kingdom Lodge. My first thought is, oh, I heard this on Magical Mouse Radio, or back then I heard this on Mouse World Radio, or or any of the others. But I would say number one would have to be Animal Kingdom Lodge. You walk in, and it's just like you're transported to a whole other world. And then probably number two, that one's really a toss-up, but I would have to say probably, for me, it had to be Boardwalk. Just the theming, the feel. I mean, you feel like you're on a boardwalk in the Northeast. It's just unlike anything. And if Disney does anything well when it comes to their hotels, it's taking you to where you're supposed to be. Feeling like you're really at a New York spring, with Saratoga Springs. You're feeling like you're on the boardwalk, or feeling like you're at a lodge in Africa or Asia. They just do an amazing job with it. So I'd say number one would be Animal Kingdom Lodge, followed very closely by the Boardwalk. But again, none of them are slouches. As a matter of fact, any Disney property you stay on, you're going to be happy. Again, value resorts, you're not going to have as much room, you're not going to have as many amenities, but you are going to have a good time, and the theming is consistent throughout. Same thing when you're staying at a moderate resort. Same thing when you're staying at a deluxe or a DVC resort. And again, I strongly encourage you, if you've got the ability to pay for it, go DVC. You get a lot of other perks. You get tables in Wonderland because you can. Annual passes, you get a pretty deep discount on APs if you are Walt Disney DVC member. So again, these are all worth doing. They truly are, and I heartily encourage you to do so. Again, I hope you take some time, like I said, to go to the different websites. Matter of fact, I'll place some. I'm going to place some links in the comments section below in the show notes. Kind of give you some websites you can go to, check some things out. Maybe even check out renting some DVC points as well. But thank you again for stopping by. I did want to remind you that we actually have 1 week left in our Cars 2 giveaway. Why Cars 2? Because that's what I got 3 copies of during our mystery unboxing a week ago. All you have to do in order to qualify to win one of these 2 is become a subscriber. We've already had a few people subscribe, and make sure you're not left behind on that. It'll be a totally random drawing, but we look forward to giving these away. It's our way of saying thank you very much for subscribing to our channel. And again, it's been great to talk with you today. Paper Duffy says thank you as well. As always, rate, comment, subscribe, check out our website at Disneyopolis.com, and you can go to youtube.com/Disneyopolis and check out all our other videos as well. As always, we are Disneyopolis. We are everything Disney all the time. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time.